close those loopholes, to change those policies, to protect our civil liberties, to protect our Fourth Amendment constitutional rights as Americans. But was the NSA going to disclose that information voluntarily on their own? Absolutely not.
No, we would have had no idea.
No.
We would have had suspicions, but then again, we'd have tinfoil hats on. And there was a gentleman who left the NSA very early on. Hill, was that his last name? But he was one of the first ones to discuss this. This is post 9/11 when they first started doing it. But Snowden was the guy that really made it abundantly clear to everybody that not only are they doing that, but they're also lying about it. And even Obama was talking, we're just collecting metadata. Like, metadata? Like, no, you're not. You're reading messages. You could do anything.
Exactly.
Like, this is just not an accurate assessment of what was going on.
No.
And it was outrageous to people.
And you had, I think he was the director of the Department of National Intelligence at that time, James Clapper, who sat before a committee in the United States Senate and blatantly lied.
Yeah.
He was asked very directly, are you collecting this information? And he said no.
Yeah.
Are you collecting this information on American citizens? And he said no. And yet he's somebody who you see on TV almost every day as an expert in this country, without any consequence, lying to the American people.
And I think that if you polled the American people and you asked us to vote on it, I think it would be a gigantic landslide victory for Edward Snowden to be exonerated and brought back to the United States. Yeah. They've got this guy, he's in Russia now hiding. Yeah. Like, it's crazy that he lives over there and he can't leave. And if he does come over here, they're immediately going to lock him up. Yeah. What would you do as president?
One thing that I think, I want to answer your question, but one thing that I think speaks to the dangerous nature of this culture that we're living in now. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had done an interview on, I don't know, one of the major networks, and I think he was talking about Trump when he said, "Be careful, you don't want to challenge the intelligence agencies." Basically putting out that threat. I don't know if you can pull that exact quote up, but I was shocked when I heard him say that, because it basically makes out that these intelligence agencies are their own separate branch of government, and that if any one of us as Americans or elected leaders in this country dares to challenge or exercise oversight over them, then we will suffer the consequences. So as president, I would change that culture of leadership. That leadership starts at the top. And when you have people in positions of leadership who continue to perpetuate that culture of unaccountability, of complete disrespect and disregard for the Constitution, of not understanding that, yes, we need to keep our country safe, we also need to protect our constitutional rights. This is not a choice between the two, which is so often how it's framed. Well, if you want to protect us against terrorists, you've got to give up all of your rights as Americans and your civil liberties and your privacies, and just let these intelligence agencies run free and run roughshod over us. And so that's the kind of change in leadership that I'll bring. There's a whole host of policies that we can look at. For example, with the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is up for reauthorization in Congress this year. There have been different sections of it that we have worked to try to change and reform to make it so that agencies like the NSA cannot collect our private information as Americans without a warrant. But there is far more that has to be done to undo the damage that we've already seen, the abuse of our rights and privacies that we've already seen.
Did you ever listen to that Kennedy speech about secret societies?
Mm-mm.
Kennedy had a fantastic speech before he was assassinated, where he was discussing this very thing. And he apparently had notions of disbanding the CIA. And he was very concerned with the power of people like J. Edgar Hoover.
Of course.
And that this was all happening while he was president, and he felt like there were people that were involved in these secret societies and these secret meetings, and that there was a lot of conspiracy going on, and he thought that the very idea was repugnant. It's a fantastic speech.
Interesting. The President and the Press is what it's like. It's got a title.
It's a fantastic speech.
I'll check it out.
But this has always been the real concern that people have, that when you give someone the ability to surveil the general population, when you give they're going to use some of that information to aid in their allies and to work against their enemies.
Yeah. That is, I mean, it's a valid concern.
Yes.
And I mean, this is what, unfortunately, we've already seen. This is what has been revealed by some of that information that was released by Snowden. And how, for example, the FISA court, as we have it now, is a secret court that has been abused for that purpose, allowing for that surveillance of Americans, violating our civil liberties and privacies. And that's something that we've got to fix, that whole FISA court from top to bottom, and how the different judges
Can you
are
explain
appointed
that to people?
It's basically it's a secret court that was appointed, I believe, or created back in the 70s, with the initial objective of providing oversight over the executive branch mass surveillance that was happening at that time, or illegal surveillance that was happening at that time. Unfortunately, especially since 9/11, now you have this FISA court that is both used to approve surveillance and surveillance programs on foreign targets, but also on Americans as well. The One of the many problems with this is it's a secret court where you have a judge and you have someone representing the government, whether it be one of the intel agencies or the DoD or whatever, coming before this court and making their case to try to get this warrant approved by the judge. There is no advocate there for the people. There is no civil liberties or privacy advocate there. It's a one-sided conversation. And the information being provided by the government is the only information that's being given to the judge. So this is one of the big problems there. And we've seen over decades now, and especially since after 9/11, that there have been very, very, very few applications for these surveillance warrants that have been rejected by the judges. So, a rubber stamping of these applications for warrants is really what appears to be happening.